and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Another night, and I am finally back. The trio is back in action after a trip that was really nice. And then I come to this cold as in the negatives Chicago lands where I get sick immediately. But back in action. Good to be back. Good Liverpool weekends. Bickler is with us. Good Liverpool Saturday morning, but a miserable Saturday nights for you. How are we doing?
We're hanging in there. There's supposed to be a dusting of snow down here. That's the weather report. So everything is shut down for the next couple of days, in preparation for the snow that we probably will get.
Yeah, speaking of snow, Gally had a lot of interactions with snow. He was just telling me right before we went on air over here. So how is snow treating you?
Yeah, we got our first. I mean, we can't really complain. Normally by now I'm like 3-4 snowstorms in. We got our first real snow system that we had to deal with this last night, and got up, went to work this morning, got home, had to deal with it tonight, and fired up the snowblower only to realize said snowblower did not fire up. So these guns fired up and shoveled my 3-car driveway. In the dark, freezing cold, lots of shoveling, lots of wind. I'll go out on a limb and tell you there was not lots of fun.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about that. I have a snowblower. I mean, it's kind of like a necessity, I think, if you're in our area over here in the Midwest and stuff. But I have not fired that thing up in ages. It sits in the garage. It probably is not going to try to start up if I try. I usually use it as my rare workout, just go out there and like sweat it out and like shovel around and stuff. But honestly, the last couple of years only have had to do it a few times. Ryan says outside working, high of 6 degrees today. Yeah, it's been like negatives over here the last 24 hours, and it's supposed to be like that the next 24 hours. So it's probably coming your way, Ryan. So enjoy the next 2 days. I'm assuming it's coming your way. Of course, Thursday from California brags that it's 58 and sunny. So, but people on the weather, more importantly, this is here. I wasn't able to catch you guys. I was going to actually try to get online and like talk some smack, but the timing with the hour difference was kind of like weird over there. But the the trivia is back. So I'll throw the clip over here. Actually, we have like an interesting one today over here. So are we ready? Which current Premier League club stadium is the furthest from Anfield? As a straight line from Anfield to them, as a straight line. Which one is the furthest from Anfield? Let's go with you, Bickler, Mr. Geography, as we like to call you among friends.
I don't know. I mean, is this as dumb as saying Ipswich because we're playing them this like? I mean, I would think it's a South Coast team. Fuck, man. I wish Norwich was in here because I could say that. Bournemouth, Southampton, Brighton are all down there. I'll go Bournemouth.
Makes sense knowing that we're playing them, but is that part of the trick question, one wonders?
I'll say Brighton.
The Amex Brighton says Galley. Are you pulling the trigger on the answer, Bickler?
Yeah, I'll just go Bournemouth. I'll just go down the coast. Bournemouth. I think actually Bournemouth is between that Southampton though, so it'd probably be, I'll go Southampton. I think St. Mary's is on the other side of Bournemouth.
You say Southampton. The correct answer is the Falmer Stadium. The Amex for Brighton is the furthest away. So here's a second part of the question, because one part is not good enough for trivia. If you include the EFL in there, there's one club. If you include EFL Championship, League One, and League Two, there's one stadium that's further away even. What is that stadium?
Portsmouth.
If you're including what league? League One, League Two?
League One, League Two, EFL. basically all the lower leagues.
What about Norwich? That's like pretty far down to the east.
The correct answer is actually our fourth round FA Cup opponent, Plymouth Argyle.
Plymouth.
It's like the
Well,
furthest.
that is down far, but that's west. I don't know.
I mean, the calculations are accurate, I would hope. Okay, there's a lot of. By the way, I have to give a fair warning. Nothing yet because Angie is sick as hell as well. And even though Notre Dame has scored, you guys were not able to hear anything. I didn't even hear anything, but there might be like random yelling and screaming in the background, dogs barking, because dogs are not used to Angie overreacting to sports events. This is what Layla is home, so I was trying to explain to Layla the difference between me yelling for Liverpool games and Angie yelling for like Notre Dame games because she's a huge Notre Dame fan. Like when Angie yells, they panic, like they think there's something wrong. They're barking, jumping, and stuff like that. When I yell, they just start running to the snack can. So it's just like a lot more. There's a more system of me yelling, but yes, since Notre Dame is playing in the background, Angie might yell and scream as they do better and better, which they're up 7-0 right now. But this is the kind of ratings that we go against in American Scouts for Monday Night Podcast. There'll be more people tuned in here, I'm sure, than the college championship. But let's talk about the weekend over here. Brentford 0, Liverpool 2, as we all expected. 2 Nunez goals to take us across the line over there. So, Bickler, the vicious cycle has already begun. I see it here and there. And I've been kind of trying to warn folks against it over the last 2 days over here about, is this the turning point for Nunez? What do you think something like this game does to Nunez the rest of the year? Let's start with that first.
I mean, I don't think it does anything. Like, listen, like, I know the players are completely different, but as supporters, did we learn nothing from Divock Origi? Where we thought, like, how many times did we think, oh, well, if we just gave him a run of games and started him, he could be the answer, right? Like, I don't know. I love Nunez. I think there was so much to love about what happened in that match besides just getting 3 points. I think I fell more deeply in love with Chiesa by the minute during that whole ordeal. But, like, I think I just think I love Nunez because of how bad he wants to be great. Like, I want everything for that kid because, like, you can never fault the effort, right? But you also can't change. Like, I think some of the things that he needs to improve on or he needs to change as a player, like, I feel like should have changed by now. And I just don't know, like, if he has all the things upstairs necessary to truly be great in the EPL. Like, I think he could go to another league. I honestly think Gally nailed it when he said he could see him over in Serie A, just absolutely smashing it. Could totally see that. I mean, and then you can continue to run the Cavani comparisons, which I still think probably holds some merit. I just don't think it changes anything. Does it make us excited and happy and hopeful? For sure. But I don't think it actually changes like anything for Orange Slot either. Other than the fact that, maybe like he starts to see minutes earlier in matches, but I don't think like that performance is like, I don't think that performance is the difference between us no longer experimenting with Diaz up top, which is the problem.
And that's the thing. I mean, that's why I'm not like, you would think, and we'll talk about it later on with the Champions League game coming up and stuff, that he might get an opportunity to start over there and maybe he just builds on it, or maybe we go back to, there's the Nunez we know kind of a thing. So we'll see that tomorrow, most likely. We'll talk about the lineups and stuff. But I guess my thing, Gally, is like Bickler is saying, I just don't see the fit. And we keep talking about over and over again. But having said that, I mean, already there were already offers. The rumors were there were offers for him to go to Syria. And we talked about this on this podcast and the morning shows and stuff about him probably moving on in the off season and all that. I guess the question to you is, if you get games like this, a step above Divock, let's say, not, once every 2 months or whatever, but he comes in late in games and gets you a goal and does one of these things, will that extend his chance at Liverpool, or do you think that decision has been made either way?
No, I think the decision's been made. I mean, I came to the decision probably about a month or month and a half ago. I was like, you know what, there's no more kind of waiting for the ship to right itself, right? It's probably not going to Paul's point. he has deficiencies. They haven't improved enough, and they're probably not going to. I think that the style of play that this manager is asking him to play in even suits him even less than Klopp's did. And Klopp's wasn't great for him either. So um I think that the club tried to buy a player they thought was adaptable and could make real headway here at this club and take the next step forward. And it didn't work out. That's going to happen. I think one thing I would say is you say, like, is there anything to build off of here? I think there is, because here's the difference. We found out today that Jota's out for weeks, not like a short period. Like, the manager basically said he'll be out as long as Gomez. He alluded Gomez could be out till March. We're
Yeah,
not going to
when you
see
say
Jota.
weeks, not months, I take that as 4 to 6 weeks, right? Because you wouldn't say a month and a half.
That's kind of where I was thinking March. Like, at this point, I'm thinking like March for Jota. There's a lot of games, important games between now and then. And to Paul's point, the Diaz through the middle thing really isn't working as much as it did for like a half and a half of a half so far. So I think you're going to see more Nunez, whether it's from the bench, whether it's, in some spot starts where it makes sense. And let's just be real here. If he has one more moment like he had against Brentford, one more late winner, his, it won't matter if this is his last year here, because he has a chance of winning like big boy trophies and having big moments on the way to it. And if we do win the league, you will remember the 2 goals in stoppage time against Brentford on an afternoon where, if for some reason you get countered on and lose that match and Arsenal finds a way to win, they're 1 point back with your little game in hand ahead of it. So that to me was a monster swing. I think you have to give him credit. And to Paul's point, I'm totally made up for the guy, because the look on his face when he scored the goal, it was the first goal. And let's be real. Does anyone actually believe he gets that touch out of his feet and sets himself up for the second goal if he hadn't made the first? Like, if he missed the first goal, there's zero chance he scores the
Because
second.
I don't
He
think
would
he's
have
even
shot
taking
that
that
thing.
touch. He's probably swinging at that thing, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, so that's that confidence part where I hope he does start against Lille. We'll get to the lineups later, but I hope he does start against Lille, and I hope he scores a goal, because we need goals.
It's very Nunez like to score that huge goal and have an entire country miss it because of the streaming broadcast.
By the way, yes. How annoying was that? I forgot to ask you, because I remember when Peacock first came out, we used to call you Mr. Peacock because you were coming on to every Facebook discussion about Peacock into their defense, and we were always putting you out there. Now, what do you
King
have to say
Peacock.
for yourself, Bickler? Because that thing froze right as that pass was going from Elliott. And I was like, I think that pass made it through. And then, it doesn't work. I refresh it, and Nunes is celebrating, and it says 2-0. And I was like, what is happening? But the next time I refreshed it, it went all the way back, and I kind of put away the phone and everything, and I watched it, but really took away from the moment. Yes, I mean, I think a moment was taken away from us in that sense. But yes, I was going to ask you about that Peacock
Yeah,
thing.
there's a lot of internet companies really like taking a massive sigh of relief. Everybody thought it was their internet.
Ryan says, how about Nunez almost getting 2 yellows moments after scoring the first goal? And that's the thing. I mean, that's part of like what we like about him, but that's part of what we hate about him, right? Like, he plays with a lot of emotion. And I think, he gives it everything he has. So that's why he's a very easy guy to root for, Bickler, because you see him, this is what he has. But I think it just comes down to the point that what he has is just not good enough, or it just does not fit. But as you watch him, even, I've been saying this for like months now, that it's just not a fit. I just don't see the fit. And then we said, hey, let's see if Slot can figure out a fit or something like that. Doesn't look like it. He was like, there's no freaking fit for this kind of an ordeal. But he's an easy guy to root for in the fact that he gives everything. Was it just a wrong move that we fell in love with his athleticism and we figured, or Klopp thought, he can maybe mold him into something? Or what do you think was the rationale behind signing him in the first place?
Well, I mean, I think the rationale was he was considered one of the top 3 up and coming strikers at the time, like across Europe. I mean, like, we talk about his wastefulness, but like at the time he was banging them in. Like, I think he was one of the top 3 or 4 in the entire, might have been even number 1 in the Champions League in terms of like goal conversion ratio. Like, he was actually clinical in front of goal, which, ironically seems to have been part of the issue that we had when he came here. I just think we saw a player. I really think that maybe we had a little bit of false confidence in how quickly we would be able to make him what we wanted him to be based off what we got out of the Portuguese league and Diaz. And I think we had such success with that transfer. We thought like this would be able to come in and be like we could basically take a player that was a project player and really iron out some of these wrinkles relatively quickly. But I think at the end of the day, like I think anybody who watched the Portuguese league would have told you Diaz was pretty much the finished product coming out. And that was kind of the opposite with Darwin. And I think a lot of what he does do well, like, has to do with pace and space. And I think like that's a premium in the EPL. Like, you just don't get the time and space that you get in some of these other leagues. And I think that's probably, the number one thing he needs in his game, and the probably the biggest adjustment for him that he just hasn't been able to make.
And when we were talking in the morning show this morning, Matush brought it up, and he said it, and this is something that I've said before. I think we probably all said it, that, he lacks in confidence. I think Matush used the word like he's a confidence player. But looking back over time, my question to him was like, is he really though? Like, what has told us, Gally, that it was confidence that's been the issue? Because he's had games like this. I mean, right at the top of the head, I can think of the Newcastle game, the Forest game, where we were like, there we go. Finally, he has arrived and stuff. And then the next game, you go back to your default settings. So maybe we maybe wanted it to be confidence, so it works, but we were constantly putting the square peg and trying to like hammer it down.
Well, I think ultimately he's overconfident, and that's part of what makes him Darwin and kind of why he's a little bit of an enigma. I mean, let's be honest. 30 seconds, a minute or two before he scores the goal, he takes the ball off of Gakpo on the edge of the area, dribbles 3 times to the right, and then just absolutely blasts a shot like 20 rows over the bar. And every single person on the pitch just looked at him and we're like, what in the fuck are you doing? That is the last thing we needed right there. And then, his 3 out of his next 4 touches are a goal, creating a move, and finishing a second goal. So I don't know that it's confidence. I don't think he's smart enough to know whether or not the confidence is helping him or hurting him. Like, I think that's part of it. I just don't think he's a very intelligent footballer, and I think this system asks you to be intelligent and understand movement. And guys like Mo can love playing with him because he's chaotic and he runs and he creates space. But at the end of the day, they don't know what he's going to do because he doesn't know what he's going to do. And I don't think you can build a side or a team around it or an attack around something that unpredictable.
So that's interesting you bring up that situation, because when that happened, my initial reaction was, dude. And then I saw Trent's temper tantrum, and I think like Bickler and I more picked on that in the Discord chats than anything else, because I was like, that was uncalled for. Because I understand. So is that, because it's interesting, and I think it's a point to consider that, Gally thinks that's more overconfidence. Or is that overconfidence to you, Victor? Or is that somebody coming off the bench and trying to make that impact so that he has one of those games, kind of a deal?
Well, I think it's a tough call, because I think that, to me, in that spot, being subbed on at that portion of the game says you're pushing and just trying to put a pop on goal. But it is very it's very consistent with what he does in the early minutes of matches that frustrate you too, right? So like, I think it's hard to make that excuse for him, because we've seen it do it at all times through the match. I'm with you. I personally was pissed at Trent because I thought that reaction from Trent was so unprofessional and so deeply like on anything that I would expect anyone to do that was on a team of mine to another player. Like, I really hated that. I thought it was selfish, and I thought it was really immature, and I really hated it because Trent, for most of the game, had been just as wasteful with his chances. And I thought, like, you subbing a striker on, nobody had a problem with Soboslai was doing it first half from range. Like, granted, he's had a better success rate, probably has a little bit more legitimacy in clout behind doing that than Darwin right now. But, I mean, I just think – I think we pick our spots, right? And I think it's an easy target when Darwin does something like that to come down on him. I had a bigger problem with the reaction. I don't have a problem subbing on a number 9 and him taking shots from outside like that, even if you do think it's a little bit wasteful.
Yeah, like I said, the moment he did it, I was like, bro, what are you doing? Like, you knew that was not going to go in kind of thing, especially when you have the numbers you're trying to build.
Until it does, though,
What was that?
I said until it does, though. Like, we were like, it's never going in until it does, because sometimes they do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with him, right? I mean, you can't blame him, and probably goes back to, I mean, I never thought of it like that, so Gally makes a good point there. Maybe it is the overconfidence where he thinks, I'm going to make this happen. That's what I'm here for, and takes that shot. He has done it a couple of times before, and sometimes it works. Mostly, sadly, it hasn't and stuff like that. But, I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, when you look at it, when the Forest game was a draw, which I guess this is like the first podcast we've done on a Monday since that game, Gally, I felt like we needed 4 out of the 6 from these 2 tough away games. So when the Forest game was a draw, I felt like we had to win this. And I really think by winning it in the fashion we did, as opposed to a regular 2-0, score in the 20th, score in the 60th minute, I think it's a lot more demoralizing to anybody who's chasing you like a team like Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it played a huge part. I think Arsenal probably literally went through their warm-ups thinking to themselves, it's 0-0. Like, they're out there doing their warm-up. They're hearing people chatter, oh, it's 0-0, still it's 0-0. They're, like, going back into the dressing room, getting ready to come back out. And someone went up to them and were like, Liverpool just scored 2 in stoppage time. And Arteta and those players had to think to themselves, like, we thought for a second someone might give us an update, and we had a chance to go out there today and cut this thing to 1 at home against a good Villa side. And instead, we got to go out there, and we know we're down bodies. We have injuries. We have no Saliba today. We're starting an attack of, what was it? Trossard, Sterling, and Havertz. I mean,
Sterling came in afterwards. Who started on the right? The young kid?
No, Nunwari's hurt too. I thought it was Martinelli who came in, but either way,
I thought Martinelli was in. But yeah, I get the point. Either way, it's not the most.
You're not starting. You don't have a big striker. I mean, they're really a shell of the side that they were. No Saliba changes everything as well. You got Partey at fullback, and they go up 2-0, and then they give up those 2 goals. And I feel like, to me, that's it. Like, for me, I'm sorry, that's it for Arsenal. I've said it before. The only way Liverpool loses this league is if Liverpool gives this league to somebody at this point. Because that Arsenal team, every single time they have a chance to close the gap, fails to do so. And more times than not, they drop points, especially recently. And they have a run of fixtures coming. I just think they're in trouble. I think there's a chance they, like, not plummet out of the top 4, but I think there's a chance that they're the ones looking at 4th, 5th, finding their way into the Champions League that way. It just feels to me like the wheels are coming off. No Saka is going to be massive for them for another month and a half, 2 months.
Yeah, I'm like, we talked about it a little bit this morning too. I'm not ready to write them off yet, but I think you're right in the sense that if they lose 1 more point where we gain points, I think that team, once that gap becomes even closer, I mean, even further away, I think they can collapse, because I think they're hanging on for dear life right now. It's like water skiing. They already fell off the skis. They're just like hanging on to the rope at this point. But I think, like, if we have another game where we get the 3 points against Ipswich and they lose against Wolves away or something like that, I can see them, like you're saying, totally folding off and opening the door for City and maybe like our Chelsea or somebody to climb up right there. By the way, Alan is really liking how you guys look, especially Gally. Alan says, you look handsome, but he does say 4-1, so I don't know
Must be this clean shaven.
And he says Bickler looks like Bickler. So that's the biggest compliment you can give anybody, I think, is Bickler looks better. So let me ask you guys this. I hate it, and I hate this time of year, but we got 2 fucking weeks left. So let's hang in there and get these 2 weeks out so the January transfer window closes. The Jota news now kind of adds to the intrigue, if you will. We don't know Chiesa. I'm hoping we do see him tomorrow. Like I say, we'll talk about it a little bit further. But does that open the needs for a transfer in January, Bickler? And do you think anything is going to happen for all the Warriors out there? Can you ease the
I mean, I think there needed to be one probably anyway, but I don't think it necessarily changes that because I think that's kind of what they were thinking about when they got Chiesa, to be perfectly honest with you. I think they thought they could have another rotational piece in there considering Jota's injury history and the sort of question marks around Darwin. Now, could you go get another one? Certainly. I mean, I think we probably make the argument that we need. There's help probably that's needed more in the center back position and the fullback positions personally. But I mean, you could certainly make the argument for it. I don't think it necessarily makes it like, I don't think the Jota injury for me is the difference between going into the market and not going into it.
I mean, there's a lot of like unnecessary panic going on, like creating this illusion that everybody's signing 5-6 players. And aside from City, who signed 3, and you could argue Marmoush is like probably a big upgrade over there. But let's face it, if we sign that's what like I was saying that in Discord this morning, Gally. If we sign the kid who's like the 18-year-old center back, everybody would be like, this is not the piece that's going to carry us to a title and stuff anyway. It's more like a future investment, which they probably will have to do, not to mention they have Walker and leaving and stuff like that. Cersei says, who's panicking? You know who's panicking, Cersei. But there has to be a mirror somewhere there that you can find. But what do you think, Gally? I mean, is it a necessity, first of all? If 2 weeks from now we're on this podcast and nothing has happened, will you be worried?
No, I won't be worried. I just said that I think that for us to lose this league, it's down to us. So I'm not going to then sit here and say, but I believe that for us to not give away this league, we have to go buy new players because the guys in the room aren't good enough to do it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and do that. I'm also not going to say that it won't bother me. I think that we were in a position to strengthen this winter, and I think they could have used for a body or two. You don't buy players in the summer. The manager says all the right there. The coach says all the right things, that he's, looking over the side and he's okay with the side and he wants to see and figure out what he has. Well, it's been 3-4 months now, and we see the pieces he uses and the pieces he doesn't. And I think we can all be honest with ourselves. They're a center back short. They were a center back short when Gomez was healthy, plainly because he didn't want to play the kid. So they were still kind of a center back short. So, I think they could have used a center back. I do think they could use a midfielder, but here's the news flash. They don't want to buy a number 10. They want to see if Jones or Elliott can play the understudy to Szoboszlai. They want to figure that out. And if they can't, then they'll probably sell those players and then they'll buy the replacement. Newsflash, they don't want to buy a Zubimendi type player because Gravenberch has become such a key figure. But they need something that offers rotation and depth. And I think that's my one key. If you gave me one player, I'd say go get yourself a midfielder, because the attacker doesn't make any sense to me, because Jota eventually will come back, even if it's for a week or two. But if you thought you were going to have him for the whole season, then where the hell have you been for the last 5 years that he's been at the club? So, I mean, in some ways, this is kind of par for the course. We have 6, and we're hoping that 5 are fit at all times. And luckily for us, Gakpo, Diaz, and Mo have been fit basically every minute all year.
Honestly, for the future, the more I see of him, the more I think Chiesa could be that piece that plays where Szoboszlai is. I was kind of like a premature, but I just feel like physicality-wise and stuff like that, will he have the same defensive work rates? We haven't seen enough of, and I haven't watched enough of him in the past to know for sure. But I think instead of like ability-wise and his passing, like his timing of passing and his vision of passing and stuff like that too, I feel like he would be a good piece over there. But probably for the short term, you're more thinking of the rotation up top. And of course, like Elliot today says that, he wants to stick around and earn a spot and stuff. And of course, fans want all these players signed, but then they also want Elliot to get more minutes. So how are you going to make it all happen is beyond me. I guess for the long-term plan, though, do you see a role? I mean, Elliott's coming in, and Slot kind of went out of his way to make sure he got his praise because he is involved in both goals. Do you see a role for him, Bickler, moving forward? Because I just don't see him physically fit that Szoboszlai role. And the only situations I see Elliott useful is when we're trying to break down a low block.
Well, yeah, I mean, he fits as long as you're playing four attackers, right? It's a matter of how often are you doing that, right? And I think that's the problem is like he works in these situations that way. But you're not really doing that unless you're chasing a game, which is how often, right? And so, yeah, I'm with you guys. I want him to work. We talked about this last pod. I think that Jones and Harvey are kind of like on polar opposite ends of the same spectrum where they both do very different things but don't fit the system. And they both just happen to be academy kids that are scouts. Like, I think we're not Harvey, but yeah, academy kid. I just think I think that it just feels like we're more and more trying to force him into a lineup in a way that doesn't work. And for Harvey, I think it's a system, like it's just a straight system that he doesn't fit into. For Jones, I think Jones has the added luxury of being able to fit in the system if Jones commits himself to playing in a double pivot as a holding mid. But I don't think he wants to do that. I think he wants to play further forward and be more attack minded. So I think they both have that issue. I'm with you on the Chiesa thing. Like, I think he solves a lot of stuff because I think he can play out wide and make it so that you can put Mo or Gakpo central and not put Diaz in there. I think he also solves for a lot of what we miss when Szoboszlai's out. So, like, I think he does, like, a lot of those things. This could be one of those sneaky situations where he becomes, like, a really, really integral big piece of this system down the stretch here in the next 2 or 3 months just because of all the things he can do. He is a little bit like a jackknife, but more of an attacking style one. And I think he can do a lot of those things that we miss when Szoboszlai's out.
Speaking of, let's talk about that Diaz thing, because you mentioned it earlier, Gally. And I think somebody in the comments referred to it as a failed experiment, which I think is like an overstatement. I don't think it is a failed experiment. And perhaps it's still your best option because of what he gives you off the ball compared to Nunez. And obviously, you can't put Jota in the equation because he's rarely available.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably your best option because Jota's not available and Gakpo's playing well out wide. I still don't think you get enough from him from a finishing standpoint. I also think he disappears at times, even when, and we talk about Nunez's touch not being good. I mean, there's times where Diaz's touch lets him down. His first touch is poor. I don't know. I personally have not seen it I have not seen the positives to it, to be honest. And I think in some ways it also has weakened the left-hand side because we're no longer rotating. We're just playing Gakpo 90 minutes out on the left. And then he gets to that lackadaisical, starts floating through matches, kind of going minutes without doing much. I didn't think he was very good at all against Brentford. I thought the starting front three was really poor, to be honest, against Brentford. And at times I thought Gakpo just kind of was sifting, but I didn't know if that had much to do that I didn't think Simicast was playing really well behind him. And for the first time in a while, Gravenberch has started to look like a guy who looks tired. Like, to me, Gravenberch looks like his legs are just gone. So, like, I'd really like to see him get a break here in a couple of these matches because I just feel like they're just running him to the ground. So maybe to Paul's point, maybe we got to push and find out exactly what type of a professional Curtis Jones is and whether or not he can, put what he wants aside for what's better for the team because we need him to play some minutes because I think Gravenberch needs a rest.
Are we doing a disservice to Diaz in this ordeal, by the way, Bickler, playing him out of position and kind of running a judgment on him purely based on what Gakpo has been able to do on the left wing. And I think we were all in agreement that he's more productive, obviously, playing the left wing. But ultimately, if you ask Diaz, is he like, well, just because this guy can't play in the middle, I have to play in the middle? It's like he can easily say, because, that's why he's in the middle, because Gakpo could not do it in the middle.
Like, yeah, I don't know.
I
think part of it is what we wanted to do is his like sort of on the ball, like direct pace that he has. I think we wanted to put that central in sort of like, like there's a couple ways that you could break down low blocks, right? And like one of them's from wide positions where you cross it in, and the other one is where you have somebody who just is an on the ball striker who runs out of team and pulls people out of positions. And I think we liked that a little bit. I think it feels like somebody's in a basement watching tape of us do this with Sadio Mane and then realizing that like Diaz never could finish like Sadio Mane, right? Like that's the difference. Like Sadio Mane could finish from anywhere on the pitch. Diaz can finish from nowhere on the pitch. So like it just doesn't work. And I think it's better when you have him out wide, attacking from a wide position, going in centrally, creating a huge space for the overlap. Like that's what works with Diaz. For me, just him up top is frustrating for everybody involved. Like, I don't even think I think spatially it's tough for his wing players to really understand like what's going on and happening there sometimes.
I think like something we always talked about where he doesn't even know where he's going. Always like that's the only time he's helped. I think because the defense doesn't know where he's going either. So sometimes he suddenly creates an overlap without even meaning to, and we have like 4 guys on the left, and everybody's like, "What the hell is going on?" So I think that's the only way it helps. And honestly, like I thought, for example, a team against like United and stuff, it would be a bit more useful because he doesn't know where he's going. It's going to be hard for like center backs like Maguire and stuff to chase him around and be like, dude, where are you going? Like, this doesn't even make sense kind of a thing. But it hasn't worked as well unless, Scally, it feels like obviously the first time you tried it, Leverkusen game, it works great. So why do you think, is it like a team that has to play very open for Diaz to exploit space and he kind of gets hidden in the middle when they jam pack it back there?
Yeah, I think that probably has something to do. I don't think a side like Brentford playing, at times 11 behind the ball is helping when Diaz is just kind of like standing at the top of the 18-yard box. Like, where am I supposed to go? Like, there's no byline. What am I supposed to do? Like, he just kind of like, and then he just starts, and out of nowhere, next thing you know, he's like standing next to Mo on a throw in. And I just want to be like Mo's like, what are you doing? Get out of here. But for me, it's one of those things, and sometimes you like see like a single moment in a match, and it like sums up an experiment. And I feel like that header that fell to him in the first half, where he got twisted up, and he not only headed it off his shoulder, it went almost out for a throw in behind him in the opposite direction. And I was just like, all right, no, I'm done. It was almost like that. I forget what match. It might have been United against us. I think it might have been United against someone else, where like someone just flashes a ball across the front, and somehow like Ahmad like gets his whole body turned sideways and he heads the ball back towards the center. Like, he heads the ball back towards the other end of the field, and even his own teammates are looking at him like, it's one hell of a defensive header, but like we're trying to score, motherfucker. Like, that to me that summed up Diaz as the number 9. And for me, I was done from that moment forward.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that, you could almost like you can see somebody think like this. The bubble above their head is like, do I head this overhead kick steak for dinner? Like, bunch of heads, like thoughts going through at the same time, and then he couldn't do any of them. Like, you've been there where you like pass or shoot, and then you end up with a shot that's weak as like a pass. It's because you were like your mind was thinking two things. That one looked like he was thinking like 4 or 5 things at the same time, and I was like, yeah, I think Beakley and I said the same things. Like, this is what happens when you play like a left winger as like a freaking center forward. It was just kind of like, you have Nunez there. He probably does some like weird shot. I don't know if he scores, but he somehow tries to at least make some contact with that. So let's move on forward to tomorrow, because there's a lot of names we threw out today that in an ideal world, Bickler, I would like to see start tomorrow. Get their minutes. More importantly, perhaps, get the other guys some rest. And I know it's Ipswich at home coming up, but you got to kind of like run the long race, if you will. So I would rather rotate a lot more. I mean, you're never going to rotate like EFL Cup or something like that, 11 people. But I, how many of these people we talked about, like Jones, Elliott, Chiesa, maybe Diaz on the left wing and stuff? How many of these do you think we see tomorrow?
Oh, I would think that we would probably see 3 or 4 of them in the lineup. Be my guess. Like these sort of rotational pieces that we want to see get minutes. Uh, I wouldn't really call him a rotational piece. I think probably Costa starts here. I would imagine. I would think that you're going to see. I think this would be a spot that you might. I would love to see Chiesa start. I don't know that. I think maybe the manager would rather bring him on for the second half, and probably doesn't trust him to go full 90 yet. But I mean, I definitely think it's a spot for a player like Jones or Harvey, right? I think that either one of those makes sense here. Is this a spot where you see Kwanzaa get some minutes? I mean, good competition on the continent. Maybe you see something like that, but I think that you'll see.
Are you resting Van Dijk? I'm just saying that because Konate was in the press conference, so one would assume he's starting.
Yeah, although he doesn't love to play Kwanzaa on the left. So, I mean, maybe this is a spot where you see Endo on the left with Konate. I'm not sure. So,
how about you, Gally? I mean, like I say, I mean, if it was up to me, I still think Van Dijk does go out there. But maybe like you take him off early or something like that, which rarely happens with Van Dijk, I guess. But I mean, I think it's a good opportunity for Endo to get out there, Elliott to get out there. Chiesa, I agree with Bickler. We don't know if he has 90 minutes in that body yet, and they're not going to force it. So maybe they start with, Szoboszlai, and then Chiesa comes in for him or something like that. But what kind of a starting 11 are you expecting tomorrow? I guess more importantly, I should ask you probably this: like, do you care about the result tomorrow, or do you care more about getting rest and minutes and doing like housework, if you will?
I'm confident enough that we'll get a result against PSV. And I mean, we just need 1 point to guarantee top 8. So out of the 2 matches, would I rather get it done tomorrow first? I would. So, like, for me, go tomorrow with a strong enough side to be playing for a draw. Um, I think I think when it comes to the rotation, I think it will depend. I don't think he's going to do like mass wholesale changes. Like, I don't think he's going to make 9 changes. So I think you'll see Mo on the right. I do. We always talk about, when does Mo get a rest? Never, motherfucker. Just score goals. I, I think Nunez will start through the middle. I think he was going to start through the middle no matter what. I think it's really harsh to give a guy 2 game winners and have the guy who he's fighting to get in the lineup with go down hurt and then be like, hey, guess what? We're gonna give Diaz. We're gonna play this Chiesa kid. Have you met this Italian kid? No, I think Nunez starts to the middle, Mo, and I'll be honest. I'd kind of like to see Diaz out on the left just to let him play a little bit out on the left wing. And because I think Gakpo needs the rest more than anybody in the front 3, barring the fact that Mo doesn't sit. I think Szoboszlai probably starts, and then I think I would do Endo and Jones. Hard on Harvey again, I know, but you can bring Harvey in maybe at the 45 minutes for Szoboszlai, bring Chiesa in for Nunez or for Mo even at some point, and maybe bring one of the kids. Bring a Dan's on the bench if he's still around. I think you could see Bradley for Trent because he needs some minutes as well. And I think these are the matches right now for those minutes. To me, at this point, we should be putting the best 11 in the league every single time. And we should be playing all these cup matches to get everybody else the minutes they need to try to win everything down the stretch.
I mean, you do have let me pull that up real quick, but you do have some games in there. You mentioned the PSV game. Let me pull that to the screen right here so that we're all talking about the same thing. But I mean, we do have a couple of games in there, Bickler, that you can like kind of mark and say, you know what, we can kind of do like a full rotation if we want, including the FA Cup game, the PSV game. You are going to go full force against Spurs, I would think. Obviously, the Bournemouth away is right before that. So do you kind of, we don't know Slot yet, right? I mean, based on what we've seen so far, he does not like doing a lot of changes. And let's face it, whenever we did it in the past under Club, it was always like a shit show because there were it looked so disconnected and stuff like that. Having seen what we've seen from Slot, do you think he's thinking like I go full, kind of like what's similar to Gally saying, he looks at Ipswich, Bournemouth, Spurs, like we'll go full force here and then fill in the banks for the other ones? Or does he looks like the manager so far that he likes doing blends and throwing them out there?
I mean, he does look like he prefers to do blended lineups over overall big changes. I think if there was a spot to do this, I think if you are going to look to do a wholesale change out on a lineup, I think what you should do is try to maximize points on this next one and do it versus PSV. That way you have the ability to go with a full lineup into Bournemouth, who is not going to roll over and give us 3 points. I can tell you that much. And they're a really good side that a lot of people are overlooking. And then on the back of that, you're going to turn around after that and go play a very important leg versus Tottenham to try to advance in that competition. So for me, it's secure the points early and take your shot on PSV to kind of roll and get some rest going.
Let's look at this at the same time because we were kind of talking a little bit about this morning. I want to get your guys' kind of take on it. Also, I want to bring that graphic up, but I know Matush was sharing a graphic about injuries and looked like Forest and us had the least number of injuries in terms of players out more than 1 week kind of thing, which obviously when you have a lot of injuries, it's kind of like snowballs because you end up playing guys who are not used to playing a lot more and stuff like that. So you keep getting more and more injuries. We've been there, done that. But looking at the standings over here, because I know I could already sense it yesterday after the third City goal, people already started crapping themselves about City coming back and stuff like that. As things look right now to you in terms of teams, lineups, form, and everything, Gally, who finishes as the top four?
Liverpool won. I'm actually gonna say City 2, Arsenal 3, Forest 4.
Wow, you're really rolling with that Arsenal collapse, huh?
I think that they're 6 points right now away, and they play each other in 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
I think that if you gave me a goal and a half, I'd still bet City.
Really?
Yeah, I think City is. I think City is showing that they're trending upward. Foden scoring goals. KDB is playing again, and they're, I don't think it's a surprise that Ruben Diaz comes back and starts again, and they get better defensively. I just think that City's figuring out how to play without Rodri. I'm not saying that they're going to be at their operatic high, and they're still going to drop some points. But I think this Arsenal team doesn't know how to score goals, and I just think that I think City figures out what to do. And I don't know if you guys saw too, the coefficient announcement or the standings came out today. It's basically a 98% chance right now that the Premier League will get 5 teams into the Champions League. So it's really top 5 for who will make Champions League next year. And I think that could make things really interesting because that could make it where some of these teams, Newcastle's, Chelsea's, Forest, they start squeaking out draws, trying to secure 1 point because the difference between 6th and 5th will be such a massive difference in the league standing. So it could be really, really interesting to see how that affects things with some of these sides not really going for it. Because I think the league's going to be semi-dusted with 5-6 weeks to go.
I love that optimism. Music to my ears.
Say,
Pickler, sing along. What do you see as the top 4, or I guess /5? Because that's a good point. We always say 4 because the Champions League. If it's going to be 5, then you're going with the 5. But who do you see up there, Pickler?
I know that City looks great, and I know that they have the potential to rip off an entire half year without losing. I still personally don't see him above. I could see him getting a 3rd, maybe. I still kind of feel like they're going to finish 4th. I honestly, guys, Forest has shown me nothing to suggest that they're not the second best team in this league. They've not. They're not conceding goals. They're scoring. I know that they don't have the firepower of a City or a Chelsea or an Arsenal, but they're so good. They're playing such good football. I'll have Forest second until I'm proven otherwise. I'm with Arsenal starting to slip a little bit here. Could City catch them? For sure. I just think that there's enough between Newcastle, Chelsea, Bournemouth, Villa, Brighton, Fulham, Brentford, those sides and up, that like they intermingle and play each other enough that I think there's going to be some unexpected losses and draws in there that's going to kind of even this thing out. I could see City finishing as high as third. I still think they'll be fourth. I think Arsenal will figure some things out here and finish third. So I guess I'd put it Liverpool, Forest, Arsenal, City, with an outside shot at Newcastle sneaking in here.
Yeah, I'm not as sold on Forrest. I think I keep going back to the goals scored. I don't know how bad Gibbs' injury is going to be because I know he came out like this game, like in the 30th minute or something like that. I didn't see anything about how long the injury is going to be, but I think I'd go with Liverpool, Arsenal, City, Chelsea, Forest. I think I put still Forest in there, and I think they will be going back to what you were saying, Gally. Like Forest would be very content with being five if that does mean going to like Champions League. Do you think they stick around there? You had him as third, right?
Yeah, I third or fourth. I think they'll stick in there. I just get nervous but this is any of these sides. But let's be real. If Chris Wood goes down for a month, they're done. Done.
Yeah.
Like they score one out of every 8 chances, and Chris Wood gets one out of every 6 of their chances. Like it's I mean, it's kind of crazy like what they do. So I think they just need everything like a perfect storm to keep going in their way. And I do think at some point they may hit a tough run of 2, 3 fixtures, even without a win, let alone ones with losses. And I think that could start to derail them a little bit and a little bit of their confidence. So it'll be interesting to see, before this weekend and Bournemouth, getting the big result against Newcastle. I really thought Newcastle might be the side that kind of makes a run up the ladder here in this table because they were just playing so well. Um, I would put more faith in Newcastle than I would Chelsea at this point to finish in that top 5 because I just think that Newcastle has actually gotten better as the season has gone along, and I'll still say I would take arguably I would take Newcastle's midfield, Gordon and Isak. I'd take that front 5 up with just about any other front 5 in the Premier League.
Yeah, Ryan says the City team isn't the teams of the last 4 years, and I agree to that. I think they will do better, but I mean, they have done so poorly that, better is not like a huge improvement. I don't think we'll have the same City losing multiple games back to back and stuff like that, but I don't see really, out of any of these teams, really, I don't see anybody that's going on a long run of like winning nonstop, not losing, but winning nonstop, because that's what we'll take, especially in City's case, and really at this point in Arsenal's case too, because every week that goes by, we're getting that much closer to the final end. The number of opportunities they have to catch up, so they gotta rack up 3 points. Speaking of that, looking at next week's schedule right here, Bickler, real quick, because next time we meet, we will have played Ipswich. Arsenal will have played Wolves away, City at home to Chelsea. What do you see anything changing after these games in terms of point differential? Anything that worries about the Ipswich game? Can Wolves get something against Arsenal?
No, I don't see anything changing there. I mean, Chelsea might make this game difficult, and they might be like, I could see something like a 2-2 draw, something kind of nutty there maybe. But like, I think that's the shot. I can't see Arsenal losing versus Wolves or even splitting that, drawing that. But we've seen worse on Arsenal, so who knows? Wolves can score, so I don't see anything out of that. That really, I mean. That out of that fixture slate, I think the one that's interesting to me is probably United Fulham, just because I think Fulham is fully capable of winning that match, and the fireworks will be real.
I mean, will there be? I mean, I don't want to make it a full-blown Premier League, but I guess we might as well talk about it because I do see Fulham as the favorite, especially at home in that game. And he did come out pretty much and said, "This is the worst team ever. Have fun, guys. Have fun for the ride." For the most part, Gally saying Don't expect anything this year. Nothing's gonna change. I'm trying to implement some stuff. You guys do what I'm gonna work in the back. It's like a manager that sits in the back office. I'm gonna do the schedule. Whatever you guys do up there, you guys do up there, kind of a deal is what I'm envisioning. So I would not be shocked at all, and I don't think it changes anything for United if they lose to Fulham. Or does it for the fans? You think?
Well, I mean, listen, they got a lot going on right now at that club. Like they're falling apart. I mean, really, they get a new manager in. They're so excited, and all in all, you can see even in some moments that you can tell he's a good manager. You heard the rumblings. You know, Liverpool was interested, City was interested, United swooped in, forced him to leave. By all accounts, he told United, just give me till the summer. I'll come in the summer. Let me finish this year at Sporting. They were like, nope, if you want the job, you have to take it now. He takes the job in October, end of November, early November, and they go, we're not buying any players in January. And he's like, wait, you forced me to take a job with a guy that you fucking gave all this extra money to and invested in his side. It fell apart for him. Now you're going to make me use his dregged players, play my philosophy that they don't fit. And like, they're almost setting him up to be such a, even if he's a success, statistically, it's going to look like a failure for 2 years. He's going to have more losses in his first 4 months than David Moyes had in 18 months. Like, those are the things that I don't think people realize, like how bad this decision-making process was. And this is all on this Ineos people. So for all those United supporters out there, just remember, you can scream Glazers out. It doesn't mean anything if the people you bring in are fucking worse. Have a good night.
I mean, I think that's the thing, right? I mean, it won't. Stephen Cook says, and the team won't run in practice. I won't listen. Good luck. I think the thing is, yes, he has to get a lot of new players to fit the system because you didn't bring a guy that was at least similar. So that's out the door. But I think, Bickler, for the fans to carry on, because there was semi-optimism, because you come to a point where you're like, anything is better than this guy when Ten Hag goes and somebody else comes in, right? So there's that new manager smell that lasted like a week and a half or whatever. But I think the fans would almost be able to deal with it in a 2-3 months if they're at least able to get rid of some people. I think the worst thing these fans want is Fabrizio like publishing weekly that Rashford is not in the squad. I think he just like copy paste the same post out over and over again, and then Garnacho comes in 10 minutes and stuff. They're like, we didn't get rid of anybody, so we didn't get anything done the entire year, and you go into a summer where you're back to square one, where you have a bunch of crap guys to get rid of. You only added half of Ajax to that list now to get rid of. So I feel like if there's some movement, if they're like, at least we got rid of Rashford, or at least we got rid of this guy, I feel like it would keep the fans going for a bit more, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think we do this thing sometimes where we bring in a manager, right? And we talk about, like, somebody listed in the chat, like, the last 4 players that United bought and, like, how they were, like, crap transfers, right? And it's like, you look at those players, though, and it's like, you know, De Ligt, the Belgian striker kid, Ugarte, and then the French center back. Like, those players all have the capability of being massive players on any side they go into. It's kind of like, how do you judge a player? It's like judging somebody going into Chelsea and not doing well. Like, I mean, I think it's really hard to judge a player when they go into sort of an environment that you know is probably toxic and disjointed. Like, I think a lot of these players could go to other clubs and be incredibly talented, gifted, great players that other clubs can build around. But I think that it's such a shit show at United, it's almost impossible. I think for me, like, I think the manager has to take a little bit of like he's got good players. I feel like we're giving Amorim a little bit of a free pass here. And I think it's kind of like, I think he's kind of already doing damage control by saying, like, this is the worst, United side ever. It's like, well, not on talent, it isn't. Like, there's a lot of talented footballers, and he should be charged with getting the most out of those. And for me, like, if you're a new manager, like, in my opinion, what he should be doing is saying, fuck all the noise. I'm going to play the guys that I think are going to be here in the next 2 or 3 years while I'm here, like, and build around those. Like you play those guys and you start building around, whether it's pulling younger players up out, and then you start very much how they did at Chelsea. I think isolate certain players that are usually in the first 11. I think you almost isolate those players and sort of put them on Exile Island and ship them out. I know that we were critical of Chelsea when they did that, but it fucking worked. Like, like they kind of regressed back to the mean, but like when they had all the pieces they knew that they wanted to build around and they were playing those pieces, like it worked. So like I think for United, like they've got to do like wholesale changes where they'll peel in big pieces out of this. Like I don't understand what players like Ericsson or Casemiro, I don't understand what those players do for you in a starting 11 in the English Premier League now. Like the pace is gone from those players. You don't need the leadership. It doesn't make sense to play those players. Like those are the decisions I think he's got to start making.
I think he is starting to like actually do that, and I think he kind of keeps saying, and that's why certain guys are not playing and stuff. But it's one of those like where you change like you have the starting 11 that you got, you change the formation, and suddenly there's like 8 holes because the guys you had originally can't plug into any of those holes because there's no like proper wing back or whatever that you want. So aside from a couple of players, they don't really have anything to build on. But hey, more power to them. It is definitely making it enjoyable to the point where my brother just changes the topic anytime I bring United up, and that's a joy by itself. He couldn't even rub it in a lot that they got like a draw. I think it's mainly because, with Arsenal stumbling and stuff, he is doing you guys won this league anyway, this season is over kind of thing. So that's, the passive aggressive defensive crap that my brother does. So, but hey, that's it for us this week. We'll be back tomorrow, actually. I'll be back starting our first Tuesday morning show in a long time because we're back every day. And then we'll be here for the pre-match and the post-match as well. Hopefully we'll get some rotation and a good result to add to it. But have a great week, everybody. And we'll see you guys next week. Take care.